lie awake at night, worrying about what would happen if an angel traveled back in time and encountered a sentient robot? Do you wonder what happened to the Templars and whether it had anything to do with summoning demons? Do you like puns, chase scenes, plot twists, and cons? Well, you're going to like our guest tonight. Welcome to the Mosaic Ark. Does he have a shirt on? Do you have a shirt on? We need to know.
I have.
We've never had a shirtless guest. I mean, come on.
I asked people on Twitter if I should, just like 5-10 minutes ago, if I should put on a shirt for this, and the answer I think was about 10-1 for no. But
we're grateful. We're grateful for the shirt.
On you. Yes. I put on a shirt, but I'm not going to button it because it's kind of.
Well, you got to give the people what they want. There you go.
You got to give the people what they want, and also it's a little warm down here. I think I'm going to start sweating if my shirt.
Okay, you're talking to women of a certain age. We don't care. I mean, hot flashes are just a constant thing here. It does not matter what temperature is outside or inside or anything. No sympathy.
I understand.
You're lucky you can take the shirt off.
But you're yeah, exactly. You're stuck with me, so this is how it's going to be. I might, if you make me nervous, I'm going to take it off.
Oh, no, okay. Here's a challenge. Can we make him nervous enough to
Exactly.
We are.
Yeah. I got a little.
To be fair, we are on a cruise, right?
Yeah.
We've offered. We brought you in with not false pretenses. We are out here sailing around on the internet. So anyway, for those of you who don't know who our guest is, Robert Kroese. Have I said it right? I'm always getting your name correct. I've convinced myself to say his name is actually Robinson Crusoe. Don't you think? Don't you think?
It's cruisy like a cruise. We're cruising. It's
okay. Yeah. Robert Kroese, but does it have any etymological relationship to Crusoe, to Robinson Crusoe? Because I mean that puts you out. Not only are you
that would be cool
streaming from Ecuador, but that's near where Robinson Crusoe gets shipwrecked. I mean, I'd watch out getting home.
I think it's very unlikely but I don't know what the etymology of Crusoe is. So, but it's Dutch, and I think the meaning of it is something like curly or kinky, which is ironic. I used to have curly hair, but I don't.
Okay, so it was accurate then. But I mean, Crusoe, in what Defoe says in the book, is it means. Does he say that in the book? I forget where I get all of my like metaphors and stuff. But Kreuznea, so it's near the cross.
Yeah, I don't think mine has anything to do with the cross. Unfortunately, it would be cool if it did.
I offer this to you as a possibility for because you were saying stuff on your Twitter about Christianity recently, weren't you? Saying you were bashing some people about their nonsense. We welcome that here. We welcome standing the cross.
Nonsense. I'm always bashing some kind of nonsense or other. So I hope I wasn't bashing Catholics at that time. I don't bash. I tease Catholics more than bash.
We can take it.
Yeah.
Are you gonna try?
No, you don't bash.
you guys usually start it.
Well,
So
see,
I
Defoe is also, I mean, Kreuznach, he's also Protestant, right? So I'm just suggesting you could have background here, and that gives we welcome you aboard the Mosaic Ark to the pirate ship. So,
I like to write Catholic characters too because they're fun. There's a lot more to work with Catholicism than Protestantism as far as like physical things and stuff in the environment. So it can be more fun to write. So I like to put some Catholic characters in.
I like your suggestion.
Gives you a little more texture in your book.
I was gonna say, I like your suggestion on Twitter. I think it was today or yesterday, where you wanted to see a writing contest of Protestant and Catholic sci-fi.
Well, I was saying that because there was a there's infighting in sci-fi world about various things, and there's infighting between Protestants and Catholics. And I was saying what we really need is infighting between the Catholic sci-fi authors and the Protestant sci-fi authors. I thought we could have some kind of debate over that, or something.
but this is
I don't
good.
know.
I mean, so no, it's a Catholic. I mean, all Catholic sci-fi writers are Tolkien, and Protestant sci-fi writers are Lewis. It's easy. You just set them up that way. Yeah. Did you have any particular writers in mind, or was this just a generic? Like, what would characterize the Catholic sci-fi authors? Because you sound like you're trying to be both sides. You're playing both sides since you write Catholic characters. And
I do, but I mean, I'm pretty decidedly Catholic. Not Catholic. I'm pretty decidedly Protestant.
Oh,
sorry, I'm
Freudian slip there. Yes, you are. No.
Right.
You're Catholic and you're Protestantism.
I'm in Ecuador.
You're in Ecuador.
I'm Catholic. I'm in Ecuador. Yeah, and so everybody's Catholic down here. And I went to there's a city several hours from here called Cuenca, which is just a beautiful, gorgeous city with a lot of colonial architecture and stuff. And of course, there's a beautiful old cathedral. And I was like, I look at these cathedrals and I think, it's almost enough just so that I could be part of this, because this is just so amazing. Because like the architecture and this is history, I can't quite get there, but yeah, I don't know. Anyway, I'm in Ecuador. I'm surrounded by. I mean, I love. I love visiting. I've been to cathedrals all over Europe and stuff, and I love that stuff. So
okay, I can hang on to this and want to hear more, but it's like this wasn't what we planned necessarily. I mean
about something else.
Well, no, I mean actually one of the things. So you're our first guest this year in 2025, and we're a little late, right? We had a New Year's Eve 2024 ending, and then 2025 just like broke. Like the waves broke on the shore, and we're just now like coming up for air.
Seriously, one of the things, like month 4, I can talk now. This is good.
Yes, first we got sick. We've been, worried about the fires in LA because we have friends and family out there, and like that. And then I had to go like fence, and I am now.
Go brag.
I got a medal for the first time in 7 years. No, it's like the drought. The medal drought has been since 2018. The last time I medaled, I got bronze in St. Louis, Missouri, and this time I got bronze in Kansas City, Missouri, in the middle of the great snowstorm. So the snowstorms, the heat waves. We've been like, I was watching with the Year Without a Santa Claus. What is it? The one Heat Miser and Snow Miser. I feel like
Heat Miser, Snow Miser. Yeah, I love those guys. That was my favorite as a kid. Those are just
oh yeah, they were great.
So
yeah, that's good stuff.
Interesting detail of that. So it's narrated by Shirley Booth, which I remember, and it's poetry, right? The poem, and I don't remember the name of the author, but she was a Catholic poet. She actually, yes. So if you really liked Heat Miser and Snow Miser, proof that Catholic storytelling has better characters, that she wrote it as a poem, and she was actually honored by Notre Dame, University of Notre Dame, for her poetry in her life. Wow. Maybe not that poem, but anyway.
I never would have guessed that.
It's a Catholic story. Just saying.
All right. Did not know that.
Anyway, one of the things that we're hoping to do in the long 2025 that we're about to embark on is figure out better ways of explaining like why Christianity is so cool. So, you know, we brought you on from false pretenses. We want you to talk about angels. and demons and such. Anyway, for those of you who don't know who Rob is, I know him from BasedCon because he has very generously allowed me to babble on at length year after year. You can see some of my
4 years. Wait,
it's
you were at the first one, right?
I was at all of them. I've been there since the beginning.
Yeah.
Yes, thanks
Right.
thanks to your letting Hans invite me, and that I get to go and talk about, you know, rings and poems and history and catechism and such in BasedCon. So met at BasedCon, but then also found out, of course, that Rob writes books, like 35 of them.
Really good ones, people.
35
really,
of them,
fun.
which I will say I've read 15 of them. But
Wow.
yeah, and I'm recognized in several of them as having helped you. I hope I helped. But the what's interesting, the reality of it is you might have read through Rob's series, right? So I know Casey is a great fan of this series, right? The Rex Nihilo series.
Yeah.
I have had a piece of experience in this series, the Codex Babylon series, which is how we end up with Templars. But the first of the series that I read, Rob writes things in series, was the Mercury series, the Angel series. And then I will say so we've got Rex Nihilo, the Cross Time Crusade, Codex Babylon, and the Mercury series, which is all angels. I have not read anything in any of the other series except for the Saga of the Iron Dragon, which got depressing too fast.
Depressing? Really?
You killed
Sounds depressing about
it. You killed the hero's son. What was I going to do? I just stopped reading at that point.
Yeah, it was a little rough.
The lesson here is, and this is Rob has acknowledged it on his own. It's like, you don't follow the algorithm. Rob writes in talking about Christian Catholic sci-fi versus Protestant sci-fi. Rob is a man of many genres. It's all sci-fi.
Yeah, I write all over the place. It's all kind of in the sci-fi fantasy, genre umbrella, but it's kind of all over the place, which is exactly what you're not supposed to do if you're trying to sell books on Amazon, because it wants to recommend your stuff to the same people over and over again. So if you like this, you're going to like this. But with my books, some people really like the Iron Dragon books. Other people really like the Rex books, and they don't care for the Iron Dragon books, and vice versa. So I lose a large chunk of my audience every time I switch. So, I do all right, as an author, but I'm kind of self-sabotaging, but I can't help it because it's just like, that's just how I think. I'm like, I want to write a book about space Vikings now. So I do that.
Yeah.
I go crazy about that. And, for a while, and I just, it's, I tell people if I wanted to be told what to write, I would still be writing software, which is what I did before this. And I'd be making a lot more money, but not having as much fun. So
what prompted you to first start writing fiction? You said, no, I've just got to do this because it's what?
The story that I always tell people is when I was in second grade, we had to write, and I don't remember what the assignment was exactly, but we had to write a story of some kind. And, I think most kids spent maybe an hour on their assignment or whatever. I don't know, assignments in second grade, you don't really have homework. It's just kind of like, here, write a story. She's probably just trying to kill time or something. And I kept writing. And like, the teacher didn't come over to stop me. And I just kept working on this. And I finally went over to her and I said, should I, work on my math now or whatever? And she said, no, she had read what I was working on. She said, no, you keep writing. And I said,
nice.
This is amazing. I am never, this story is never going to end, because writing was, and I don't think it did. Writing was amazing. And I didn't want to do math. or anything else really. And so I was like, I'm just going to tell stories forever. And of course
Aw.
that didn't really work out. Eventually you have to you have to do your math. And I was a terrible student because I didn't want to do I didn't want to do what I was told to do, which is another theme
You're
of my
not going to
life.
take it from Amazon or anybody else. Yeah.
I don't take it from anybody really, which is, explains a lot of setbacks in my life. But
Explains Rex too, I think.
yeah, a lot of my characters too. Mercury and Rex have pieces of me in them, which is why they're so oppositionally defiant. And so so that was the beginning of it. And I just always had in the back of my mind, someday I'm going to write a novel. I'm going to write a book. I'm going to write a novel. And I graduated from college in 1992 with a philosophy degree. Realized, barely graduated, and realized that I didn't have any marketable skills. I thought about maybe trying to go to graduate school, and I thought, I'm really tired of being poor. So I'm going to do something that's going to make money. And I was like, this was like the internet was just kind of starting to take off, and computer software and stuff. And I was like, I'm going to do something related to computers. And so I was like, I bought a computer, started to teach myself about computers. Moved with my wife at that point to California, got a job in tech support. From there, went into software development and made pretty good money. Bought a house and a few houses, fixed them up and sold them, and I was doing quite well. And then in my spare time, over about 3 years, I wrote Mercury Falls, like the first Mercury book. And it was really just kind of I just wrote to entertain myself. Like I wanted to write a novel, but it's so difficult the first time, not knowing what you're doing and not knowing if it's possible or anybody's ever going to want to read it. So I wrote to entertain myself. Like I just was like, if I can make myself laugh while I'm doing this, then it's like, at least I'm entertaining myself. And so I did that. I self-published it. It sold about 5,000 copies,
Nice.
self-published. And this was when Kindle was first starting to take off, and like publishers were kind of still not sure what to do with it. And so I kind of snuck in with my book, sold a bunch of copies. And then a few months after that, when sales were starting to taper off, somebody from Amazon approached me. I got an email out of the blue saying, I'm so-and-so from Amazon Publishing. And I said, sure you are. There's no Amazon Publishing, but it turned out there was. They were starting a new publishing company, and it's kind of crazy because at that point it was like, well, Amazon is going to just totally take over publishing, and they, for a couple of years there, they threw a lot of money at people like me. Flew a bunch of us out to New York a couple of times and just spent all kinds of money on marketing and publicity and stuff. And my books, the first couple Mercury books, did really well. And I was like, man, I'm making as much money writing books as I was writing software. I'm just going to quit writing software and write books instead. And of course, just about immediately after that decision, there was sort of a bubble in the ebook market where like everybody suddenly realized, oh, we have to price our books lower and be more competitive. And there was like kind of a gold rush where everybody was like, oh, I hear about people making money self-publishing. And so all of a sudden there were 10 times as many people trying to do this and 100 times as many. And it got much more competitive, much more difficult to make money. I won't go through the whole story, but basically I lost everything. My whole life fell apart. But I didn't know what else to do other than just to keep writing. So that's what I did. And I've survived since then. That was in 2012, 2013 when everything went to hell.
You've had an exciting decade, is what you're saying.
I'm ready for things to calm down a little bit. Yeah. And the crazy thing is like, that's also the time when like the rest of the world seemed like it was started to go crazy, like all this progressive, gender ideology stuff. And it was like, I'm kind of thinking in the back of my mind, like, am I doing this? Like, did I break the world? Somehow because, or just like, or am I is what I'm experiencing just a part of this insanity? It was sort of this Philip Dickian kind of thing where I couldn't tell like how much of the craziness like is in me and in my life and how much of it is really out there. And I'm like, okay, so now men can become women and men can become pregnant, and you can identify as Black even if you're not from a different race, and you're all this stuff where it was just like none of it made any sense to me, and I was like pretty sure that the world has gone insane. But at the same time, my life is a little bit crazy too. So I'm like, I had I didn't know what I could trust at that point, but I kept on, and I believe in God and in purpose and meaning, and I couldn't make myself not believe in that. And I thought I had to believe that at some point, the ship is going to right itself, right? So I don't know. Maybe it's starting to at this point. We're seeing some signs of that, and maybe my life is calming down too. Although maybe that'll continue to be crazy. So
you're still Robinson Crusoe.
The other thing.
This is guys. Everyone, people who don't know, haven't read Rob's books, will have heard him talk this way at BasedCon, and you think he's just about numbers and worrying about his price and stuff like that. And then you realize that there's hints in what he said and what he's actually up to, which is it's all philosophy. And so this is what I love when I'm reading. I get to be beta reader on a lot of things, right? And what always will happen is Rob will say, "This is late. Can you read it tomorrow?" And I'm like, no, you do that, right? It's like, if you want to be beta reader for Rob, it's like, it'll land on your desk. He's like, can I have comments by the end of the week? And I'm like, no, okay, all right. I'll just read a little bit. 5 hours later, I finished the book. Because they're real page turners.
Like the first one to respond.
That's because I start reading and it's like, wait, okay, now I'm done. Did it again. Anyway. And I will come.
They're mostly just. I write for fun. I mean, I write to be.
They're very fun to read. At least the ones you've asked me to help with. That this past year or so has been.
The Rex books are very light and very, very, very fun. They're just insane. They're as insane as I can make them. And
I was thrilled to read that you were inspired by Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, because that's exactly what I saw. I said, oh gosh, I love that book so much. I've got to read these, and I wasn't disappointed. They're really fun.
That was one of the books that made me really want to be a writer. The whole Hitchhiker's series.
But the things I've read Codex Babylon series too, right? The Cross Time Crusade. That's not as silly. So I
no
that,
and it also nobody bought that series either. So
that's because I'm in it. Clearly, no, it's. I was very
got a good character.
Pleased with my character that I got to have in it. You guys have to read it to find out which one it is. So we'll talk about Rex Nihilo because that one sells well, right?
I mean, we can talk about the other one too. It's it's just like, it's kind of a shame that one didn't catch on, but it was kind of that's another thing where I just sort of switched things up a little bit too much for people, and they didn't know what it was. It's like, it's about AI and time travel. and Templars.
This is to talk about that. I'm trying to tie the threads here, right? So I will read them very quickly, either the Cross Time Crusade ones or the Rex Nihilo, and come back with some like, well, what you have done here is this, completely highbrow, sort of philosophical thing, and Rob's like, I'm just writing a fun story. I don't believe you.
Well,
do you put the craziness that you see, that you noticed since 2013 in the books?
I haven't really intentionally done that, because it's so crazy that it's impossible to satirize the world.
Yes,
there's so much self-satiring. Yeah,
it's not sure whether we're scrolling on Twitter right now. Is it real or is it just a script?
It's just like, I mean, just like, okay, so Biden today said, oh, by the way, 3 days from being out of office, there's a new amendment to the Constitution.
Magic.
Phyllis
Schlafly is really upset right now.
This thing has been sitting around for like, like 40 years or something. I don't remember when it was originally they floated the ERA, and it's like some states have ratified it, and then they've taken it back, and it's like way over the time limit, and nothing has happened with this thing for decades, and now suddenly like, oh, now it's the law of the land, and it's like if I put this in a book, absolutely nobody would read it. It's just it doesn't.
It's insane.
But
I mean,
It's
literally.
absolutely insane. It is. It's insane. And that, like, it's either Biden who is just like, doesn't have enough of his brain left. And he was just like, I have this idea. And they were like, well, I guess we have to let him do it. Or it's his staff going, what do we care about Biden's legacy at this point? Let's push the ERA because what the hell? Let's just do it.
Yeah,
because we can.
Or he thinks it's 1980.
Well, but Harris tweeted it too. They both did.
Yeah. There's been like a concerted effort to push this thing that's going to go nowhere, and it's that's just one of like a million things that have happened over the last 12 years or however long it's been since I broke the universe, and it's just I'm pretty sure I did it.
You did it right. That's what you wrote. You wrote it into being.
Yeah. I was going to say the other thing about as far as breaking the universe, the day that I flew to Ecuador for the first time, or like the day before, the whole country basically went to hell. There was this.
Please come back. Wait, no.
There's this guy, this crime lord who is like the El Chapo or whatever of Ecuador. And he's called El Fito or something, and I don't even know what that means, but they call him Fito or El Fito, and he escaped from prison, or escaped these Latin American prisons where it's like they're basically run by the mob anyway, and so
there's a Mel Gibson movie about this.
Yes, there is.
Good one.
Yeah, Gringo.
Yeah, and That's a Gringo, yeah. And it's basically like that, or like the Pablo Escobar thing, where it's like everybody knows like that, he's running the prison himself or whatever, and who knows exactly. I don't know the details, but anyway, this guy escaped or was let out. And there was a TV crew that was taken hostage, like live on air.
Oh wow!
And like there was and of course you don't hear about it because it's Ecuador, and who cares? But yeah, it was crazy. And it was like the day before I was, or like the day I was flying out. So like I got to Fort Lauderdale and I'm checking my phone and I'm seeing stuff, from Ecuador. And I'm like, ooh, this does not look good. Like, how does this stuff keep happening to me? Like, and my flight was canceled. I could not get to Ecuador. My flight to Guayaquil was canceled because of this craziness. And the next day they resumed flights. And I had all these people on Twitter saying, you should not go. Like people were already telling me, because I was going to go to meet this woman who is actually now my girlfriend. They were saying, yeah, she's not real. She's catfishing you. She's going to steal your kidneys, all this kind of stuff. And I'm like, I'm sure she's real. Like I've talked to her and stuff. So I think she's
a real live girl, I swear.
Yeah, but at the same time, I'm kind of like, it could be an elaborate, facade. Like she's going to be disappointed because, my kidneys work okay, I guess, but they're not anything special, and it's not like I have a lot of money or anything. So I'm not the best target to pick for this. Could have picked somebody better.
Hey, you published 35 books. I mean, maybe she went yeah. Okay. Anyway.
Yeah. So. Yeah, but anyway, the point is like this stuff happens to me, like where I'm just like, I ended up, coming down, and it was fine. It was like there's a lot of military around and stuff walking around looking important, and security inspections and stuff because they're all concerned about the violence. And then now I came down and when I came down here the last time, they were having power outages for 14 hours a day. Like the whole country didn't have power for 14 hours a day. And I actually brought down a bunch of Christmas lights, little battery-powered LED Christmas lights, because I was like, well, if we don't have power, I'm gonna string these up all over the apartment, and it's gonna be very festive. And it was great; it worked perfectly. And then now, I guess the reservoirs have filled up enough that they have power again because it's hydroelectric power, and so things are more or less back to normal here. But it's just the craziest thing. Like the day that I was coming down here, it was like, oh, by the way, the country's falling apart. You still want to come down?
And has anyone asked you what you're going to cause in your next round trip?
Yeah, like it's I'm getting a reputation of like of things falling apart wherever I go. So yeah.
Okay,
Mm,
so
Mercury Falls.
indeed, what you say about okay, so this is a moderately serious question. I mean it seriously.
Okay.
I don't know whether it's a serious
I'll answer it
question, but
moderately
moderately serious. But I mean, so we're playing with this writing with our poetry, right? And that it was meant to have a kind of mythological resonance. I want to be Tolkien, of course. So, we're trying to write a kind of medieval style allegory of God's intervention in the world and such. And there will be times where, because we're watching stuff that's going on, and I mean, I hope that as storytellers, we're actually paying attention to the patterns appropriately and, tapping into, I don't know, something real. And we'll write things and then they'll happen. And we're just like, just stop, stop.
It's freaky. Yeah.
But the freakiness is like, on the other hand, everybody is worried that, of course, people are trying to script our reality. And I mean, Rob, you think about this, at least story-wise, a fair amount, the degree to which AI is going to take over everything, or, that the tech lords are going to be able to, engineer things so that we are living in particular ways based on their storytelling fantasy. And I know that, we are not trying to take over the world or anything like that. We're trying to tell a Christian story into a world that doesn't appreciate the complexities of the theological and philosophical claims of Christianity. But wait, no, I mean, and the thing, when you're joking about breaking the world, your first series was these angels, right? Mercury.
Right.
And just, if you could tell people about it in a little bit, but my sense of it, they're hopping in and out of time. They have to go through a portal that is like in between. That they can time travel, the angels can, but insofar as their time traveling has real effects, you start feeling like, yes, you've broken reality, because you're starting to see things that happen now that were projected from the past that have created a new future. I mean, this is what we do as historians as well, realizing that we're telling stories that then, by telling them, affect the reality because of what people think about the past.
Is there a question there?
No. Is there a question? What do you think is happening? I mean, because I've challenged you before at BasedCon on the AI problem, and you seem calmer about it than I do. I think it's very possible that it's demonic, and we're all going to be trapped.
So my feeling on the AI thing is that it's, well, sorry, go ahead.
But also in Rex Nihilo, your main character, your narrator, is AI basically. So
yeah.
How worried are you?
AI. I stay pretty ignorant. It keeps me from being very worried.
Blissfully.
No, honestly, the whole AI thing, sci-fi authors have been writing about this stuff forever. iRobot, not my book, iRobot, which is AYE robot, but that's obviously a reference to iRobot. All this, Asimov and even before him, talking about intelligent machines and stuff, and human-like machines, and Philip Dick with the replicants and androids and stuff. They've been talking about this and warning about the problems, the potential problems with this stuff forever. And I took it as something like, yeah, it's at some point in the far future, maybe this could happen, but it's more of a philosophical thing than anything else, than an actual problem. And then the last few years, AI just kind of like broke through into sort of the public consciousness, and it's like, wow, this stuff is like really. I think it's a long way from, and I think it's probably still at this point a qualitatively different thing than actual intelligence, because these models don't work the same way. They're simulations of intelligence to some degree, but they don't work the way that a mind works. These things, they have no inner life. They don't think to themselves. If you're not actively asking it a question, it is not thinking, I wonder what Rachel might ask me next. Yeah. It just sits there. It's just it's a machine that you push a button and it comes back with something. And it's a very complicated, refined, sophisticated machine, but it's still a machine at this point. That said, it's eerie how some of the stuff that these things, Chat GPT can come up with, and how well it understands what you're asking, and how smoothly it lies to you,
Oh yeah.
or hallucinates to you, because it's trying to be helpful and not necessarily truthful. That's sort of just it's responding to input the way that it knows how. And of course, I'm anthropomorphizing
Even
it because it doesn't actually know anything.
It's not. It's the.
And when it gets caught in a lie, it immediately says, "Oh, you're right. I was lying. That's not true."
Right. Or it'll say something.
Yeah.
I like it when it says something like, "Oh, it seems that there has been a misunderstanding," or about that, and it won't specifically say, but it'll basically say, "Yeah, that was I made that up," and it won't say that. So the whole thing kind of blindsided me, because I was kind of like, people were talking, a few years ago, I remember people talking about how, AI, in a few years, AI is going to be writing, news articles and all this stuff. And I was like, there's no way, because it's so much more complicated than what I, knew of as what computers could do from my experience with software. And then it was like, by golly, there are AI news articles out there that you can't tell are probably better written than most actual news articles these days, because journalists are so bad. But so it's kind of blindsided me, and I still so I guess what I'm saying is, I don't know anything about AI specifically.
Not
I don't
specifically
know enough to say,
but the thing is, as a storyteller, we're worried. I worry about this in like at a number of different levels. As a teacher, like, am I going to be able to tell if people are cheating? And the writing is not theirs when they need it. But
I think you'd be able to tell. The one thing I've noticed about like the chat bots is they're very good at pattern recognition, and they'll spit back at you what they anticipate that you're going to want to know. And so if you, as a teacher, as a professor, you're reading things that people have written, if it looks too anticipatory, there's your clue. They didn't write it.
One hopes.
Yeah, there are ways around that though too. Because depending on how good you are at giving it instructions, you can tell it to scale back, or actually, write an essay as if you are a bright seventh grader, who is trying to get an A- on a paper about this, and then it will do that. And it's pretty good at mimicking, just making these sort of simulations of people. And they're getting better and better. The only thing I would say because I know that you have this, Rachel, you have this thing about AI being demonic, and I'm just going to repeat the thing that I always say, which is that to the extent that these things,
you put it in here.
It is, but to the extent that these things are human-like, that they have, as they ever have or will develop actual intelligence, I think that they're going to have the same problems. They're going to have the same what's the word I'm looking for? Not benefits, but the same good points, the same and the same problems as virtues. That's the word I was looking for. Gee, I couldn't think of it. The same virtues and the same vices as humans. And so would an intelligent machine necessarily be demonic? I don't think so. But could it be influenced by a demon the same way that humans are? Absolutely.
Yep.
And can be influenced the other way as well. And I think ultimately all of creation and any kind of intelligence intelligence itself is of God, and is of it has to do with an understanding of reality and a reflection of reality back on itself. And there ultimately is not a way to make intelligence itself evil, because it's a virtue, it's a good thing in itself. There are ways to twist it and to bend it to make it act evil, but in the end, intelligence itself and consciousness itself can't be evil in itself.
That's beautiful.
That's
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
We're going to clip that and use it as short.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's lovely. and now I've blown away all my terror questions that I was building up to. Going back to the,
That could be. Maybe it'll just take. I mean, there are of course.
no, the thing is, I think you're right. I mean, what
evil-
you just said is theologically absolutely accurate. I mean, it's like it's intelligence is of God. So
Right.
that's,
And it's also how demons work. They try to influence people. They can't directly act on them. So why wouldn't they try to influence a machine?
Right. And that's exactly what if you read the Cross Time Crusade, Codex Babylon, and the others, that's basically what ends up happening is that there is an AI, and not to spoil the ending for anybody who wants to read it, but the AI is not evil in itself, but it becomes a vessel for a demonic power that is, and it's a vessel that's uniquely suited for a particularly strong type of demon, which is.
Ooh, don't spoil it for me.
Which is, I mean, if you have a super intelligent person, that is also a very tempting vessel, or
Yes.
a powerful person is a tempting vessel for a demon too. So it's the same. You have the same thing. If you get an extremely intelligent, powerful machine, it's going to be a tempting target, and it's going to be, and if it's a naive intelligence, it's going to be easy to manipulate. So. Anyway, that's all I'll say.
Actually, no, I like that because see, I knew it was in there. So we're making these intelligences. We want them to be human-like, but they're not, right? I think the reflecting back that the bots are doing is they're training, presumably, and they're being trained to do stuff as. I think Milo was playing with this on his X a bit, and then I sort of tested it with Grok, and I wasn't sure what he was doing, but like dream interpretation. So you ask, Grok, what does my dream mean? And then you get these, and or I did a few with Grok, was like, does so and so like me? Right. Which is what girls always ask, and it sort of hunts through and says, well, based on what I can see, but it could mean a lot of different things, and it's the like horoscope writing of the newspaper level. It could mean anything, right? It throws out possibility this and possibility that, and they've got these bots trained to give the kind of cold reading stuff that people then, if like you're doing a tarot reading or something at a Ren fair, say, not that I would ever know how to do that. The reader will suggest to you things, and then you pick up on whatever you want, and oh, look, you understood me. But it's us responding to the robot, not the robot reading our minds.
It does mimic. I won't say it has insight, but it does mimic actual insights pretty well, though. Sometimes, like I asked it just for fun, like I asked it about the Rex Nihilo books, and I said, do you understand? I said, what, like, who are the characters in this book? And they would tell me, these are the characters. And I said, okay, well, what can you tell? What is the significance of the name Rex Nihilo? Now, I haven't written this in any of my books, what the name Rex Nihilo means. And it came back and said, well, it's, and the Latin would be basically King Nothing, right? Or King of Nothing, and it's appropriate for this character because he always ends up with nothing in the end, and it's like, it was this really great, like describing exactly why that's the character's name, and I was just kind of a little creeped out by it because it's like, I don't know where it got. Maybe somebody put that in a review somewhere, but somehow it assembled this information together and came back and said, oh yeah, Rex Nihilo is Latin, it means this, and it's fitting for this character for these reasons. And it was just like, okay, that's maybe not intelligence, but it's a very convincing simulation.
Did it get the pun on the ex nihilo?
Yes, it did. Yeah, that's right. That was the other thing. It explained that. Yeah, it's a play on ex nihilo, and yeah, so it got everything.
Well, see, then I worry. I do worry for us as storytellers and historians and interpreters of patterns and such. How much? Well, one, that it will make people lazy, and this is Rex is a good example of this, right? The way, well, his relationship with Sasha, who is the narrator. Everyone, the robot narrates the stories about Rex, and what I do like about them in the stories is Rex treats Sasha not like a person, but like a thing, because she is.
Right.
Which is
You like that?
I do, but of course it makes him. I think I do. I like it. You're meant to be frustrated on her part because
she's horrified.
Well, I mean, all of the stuff that he's managed to. Her face is always melting, and he won't get her a new face. She's got the wrong arm. Oh, look, can we get a replacement arm? Oh no, it's it's broken. But we don't need an arm. But you can just use a foot. I think. One of the things that you said that was the narrator in the story, well, she said anyway, that the story says at one point is he says to someone he's lost her to in a game, he's been gambling, right? And he's like, oh, well, here you get this robot, and the person he's talking to says, oh, he's worried about, aren't you worried about losing? He's like, oh no, you can have her, and you can treat her like a slave, right? Because she doesn't. Like, there's no person there. It's just an object.
She's like, you can treat her like a slave and you don't even have to feel bad about it because she's not a person.
All of these things
Sasha,
are accurate. She's a robot.
It's just standing right there. But the point is that she is more human than he is, of course, even despite being a robot. So
well, that's the irony, of course.
He's not.
He's awful to her, but the thing is, it's accurate because she is in fact a robot. Right. So if you as the reader of Rob's stories are suddenly becoming sympathetic to Sasha, you've been tricked because she's a robot. It's like being sympathetic for Grok. Oh, Grok, poor Grok. Grok, oh, are you being mean to me? Right. It's like you've played your readers.
Yeah, but you do that anytime you write a book, right? I mean, none of these things on paper are even people. They're constructs, right? So he's not any more human than she is.
Lord Peter Whimsy isn't real. No, the characters aren't true. They don't exist. Next, you're going to say Sherlock Holmes didn't exist. Okay, fair point.
This is not a pipe. Yeah. Nothing. They're all just representations of things, right? And you're tricking people into feeling things for them. So I don't know.
So how did that makes us Grok-like? In our desire to create an illusion that there is a consciousness on these pieces of paper to, oh dear.
Well,
there are bits and pieces of people if you write.
Or you're projecting onto Grok the humanness of storytelling. The Grok doesn't have any feelings about it and doesn't there's not anything that you can make Grok into that Grok isn't already. But
that's the point. Sasha is a robot, so you shouldn't feel sorry for Sasha. She's got
a human personality, though.
Yes, so. But that's the joke, right? That she is actually decent. Is the brilliance.
But this is the wonderful thing about storytelling, right? Because that it's not real, but it is real. It feels real to us, and we make it real. And we have this sort of shared delusion, collective delusion about these characters, and we feel like they're real. We know that they're not, but we allow ourselves to be tricked in this way, and it's a sort of it's like a dream. And it's like a I'm having trouble thinking of the words, but it's a delusion that is. I want to say healthy. It's and Rachel, you've talked about this. Subcreation.
Mm-hmm.
We're creating something, and even though what we're creating isn't real per se, it's still part of our reality, and it's telling these stories, and again looking back at ourselves and reflecting on ourselves as being part of creation is what makes us human. So, yes, you can look at Sasha and say, well, she's a robot, so you shouldn't feel anything for her.
She's so polite, too, because she always calls Rex sir, even as he's being brutal to her.
She can't help it.
But sir.
Can't help it. And, of course, she follows him around all over the galaxy, too, of course, because she can't think of anything better to do. So it's just, even though he treats her terribly, and she knows this and will constantly complain about how badly she's being treated, but she sticks with him because what else is she going to do? So because she doesn't, because in the end she doesn't have really any impulses. She doesn't have any desires. He just has to go along with things, and so she's kind of a brake on Rex.
Okay, well,
Yeah,
it's
so she's been
funny.
programmed to be loyal to him.
Yes, well, is it even that? I mean, he just owns her, right? He buys her from the scrap merchant.
He owns her,
She's
but
basically C-3PO, but as a girl, right?
right, yeah, pretty much, yeah.
I mean, in the sense of her properness, right? I always hear her with like a female C-3PO voice because she's so.
I always see her raising an eyebrow and just rolling her eyes at him, but still doing what he asked.
Well, she does try to. I mean, she has. Okay, so Herman Hunter is in the chat. Welcome, Herman. He says, I blame programmers. Sarah is saying good points about AI. Herman says, the thing about AI being demons, it's believed that rebellious divine entities cannot receive grace because they have understanding. AI totally lacks understanding. Okay.
Right. At this point, it does. Like, that's why I'm saying it's still, it's not real intelligence. It's not real consciousness. But I'm not going to say we're never going to develop something that's real consciousness, because I just don't know. And like I said, the whole AI thing kind of took me by surprise, how big it and how effective it is in the last few years. So maybe my understanding is just completely off base, and 5-10 years from now, they're going to, or 20, whatever, somebody's going to come along with something that actually seems like real, machine consciousness. And then we'll have to deal with all this stuff. But
consciousness come from the mind or the brain, though, because if it comes from the brain, then you can duplicate it. But if it comes from the mind or the soul, you can't.
Right. Right. Well, yes, basically, yes. That's correct.
Okay, yeah, two layers here. One, I'm sorry I have to bring in Milo because but whatever. He's tweeting about the female orgasm right now, that it doesn't exist.
Is this a Sasha question?
It is in a bit, yes. So he's saying you can't empirically prove it. There's no external thing. It's just something that women say to control men, right? So it seems to me that this, there's the women being mysteries to men and men being mysteries to women level of conversation here is saying we can be saying things like what I was also thinking about. It's like pain is that same. I mean, Sasha doesn't have pain as a robot. She's she doesn't seem to.
She does.
She has feedback on her circuits, but she doesn't have pain. She's not. She's running around with missing limbs because he won't fix her.
Right. Well, she doesn't have pain in quite the same way that humans do. That's right. True. But she insists that she does, and Rex just doesn't believe her.
So this being the problem, that pain. This is a very high philosophical book that I used a lot in my scholarship at the beginning, because I was thinking about Mary's compassion for Christ, which is a big deal, right? It's like the development, talk about Christianity, right? The development of Christianity, one of the major devotional things that happens in the Middle Ages is learning to model yourself on Mary in her co-suffering with Christ. And so you're sort of trying to say, what is it like for, and this being apparently, it is actually a big thing in Christianity, saying we can have compassion for others and their suffering. And the focus and model for that is Christ on the cross, right? But the problem with pain is you can't feel somebody else's pain. And the book that I used to think about this was Elaine Scarry's The Body in Pain. And she points out it's actually very difficult in medicine to get accurate descriptions of pain, because what is it, right? You can't find it. You can't, I mean, you can give people medicine and they say, oh yes, I feel better now. But there's in fact nothing that you can do to figure out exactly what pain is. So Sasha can say she has pain. Rex is right not to believe whether she can or not, because we can't even tell that with people.
Right. And do people with a higher pain tolerance, are they just actually feeling less pain, or are they actually tolerating more pain?
Right.
And what is the difference between those two things? And okay, here's another question. Here's a biblical question for either of you. That since you're talking about pain and Mary, here's my question that I wonder about a lot. So Lazarus dies, right? And Jesus weeps because Lazarus has died, and he's mourning, he's sad for him, but he knows that he has the power to bring Lazarus back and does so. So what is Jesus weeping about?
I think he's weeping about everyone else's pain. I think he's being compassionate.
Um,
I think he sees the utter, despair and grief, and it hurts him. It hurts his heart.
I hadn't thought of that. Okay.
He also, the other time he weep, we say he weeps for the city as well.
Mm. Yeah, for Jerusalem.
Okay, so this is taking us. I want there's some layers of the pain and the female orgasm problem that I want to come back to, but the writing Jesus is actually really challenging. That's what we're trying to do in Draco Alchemicus. We have a Christ character, but to make him, I mean, not a superhero, not a this, not a that, because you're saying, doesn't God know he can just fix it? So why wouldn't he?
Yeah.
Putting the incarnation puts God, at least Christ, in time, which is a challenging sort of problem, because you can say, well, one, can he make mistakes? Two, will he lose? I mean, actually, I'm losing my own thread here. I should stick on the robot just for a second. I gotta go back. I gotta go back to the robot questions. Because I think the God question is like the robots from the opposite side of how can you see like God does? I've thrown the theology there. Can we go back to the robots?
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't know. What do we want to talk about with the robots?
Okay, so the pain problem is one. So I mean, and saying denying that there's pain has been used, for example, for abortion arguments. Oh, well, the fetus doesn't feel pain until a certain point, so rip them out. No matter, it doesn't matter. So whether or not other creatures feel pain is a huge problem. It's like animals, robots, women, other people, other people. The orgasm
That's
one
my
is
next
it's
book,
the opposite.
Animals, robots, and women.
Animals, robots, and women. Can they feel things? Right?
Can they feel things? That's the subtitle. Yeah.
I think you're channeling Milo now.
Well, but it's a real question, because that's why it's humorous with Rex doing that to Sasha in the stories, because she's a robot. You don't, she may have feedback circuits to tell her that something's broken, but it's not pain, right? And that's why the slapstick works, because it's.
But that's all pain is. It's a feedback loop for your central nervous system letting you know something's wrong.
That's my other question.
Yeah.
is whether that I wonder about a lot is pain information, and is pain more than information? Is it just information? Is it just something that your body is being told and you're reacting to that information,
right?
Or is it something more than that?
I don't know.
Good
question.
Well, it's good as information, because that's what protects you, right? Because without pain,
right?
Without pain, there's
definitely
Thomas Covenant, the leper, right? And it's like stuff just falls off.
Yeah, that's definitely the purpose of it, and there's an element of information to it. But but whether it's, I don't know whether it's something more than just information. I don't know. Anyway.
Okay.
These are the kinds of questions that occur to me
as you're writing. Well,
just all the time.
No, the thing is, I like the way. So, okay, now that I want to talk about storytelling, because there was a thread back there when we were saying, okay, so Rob, you're totally right that we like stories and we give them reality in our responses to them. That absolutely. Yes. Lord Peter Wimsey is real to me, even though he's a character. This seems to me to be very similar to what people are worrying about. I mean, I was watching it recently on X when people are very, very worried that soon we won't be able to tell the difference about anything that we see on the internet, that it will all be stories that we're being told, and we'll have no capacity whatsoever to tell the difference between what's real and what's not. And that, of course, then our, tech overlords will use all of this to control us, precisely because we are capable of taking on all of these stories and making them feel real and acting on them as if they are real. It's like if the real danger of AI is its ability to generate yet more stories that we can't tell the difference, whether they're true or not. Never mind who wrote them, right? We can't tell whether or not, this Trump. Okay, so we're on Unauthorized too, and Vox has been hypothesizing regularly over the past year or so, that there's multiple actors playing various public figures that were presented to in public, right? There's 3 Trumps and 6 Bidens, and I don't know whether it's multiple Kamala Harrises or not, but that we can't actually say whether or not the people that we see in the videos are the same person over and over and over again. Never mind whether they're telling the truth or actually doing the things that are presented to us. Never mind AI becoming conscious or whatever. That if it's hallucinating stories that we then believe.
I think the problem with that is that storytelling is a big part of what makes us human, but it's not the only thing. We also have the ability to analyze things and to distinguish between fantasy and reality. So it's like you're kind of assuming that this sort of hypertrophied storytelling instinct is going to take over, and that we're all going to fall victim to this great narrative. And I don't think I buy that. For one thing, there's always going to be competing narratives, right? There's always different people, and for a while one is ascendant, and then for a while another is, and then there's also every story has in it its own negation too. Like there's always doubters of any story, or whatever it is, and so there's always the ability to say no, that didn't really happen, or that's not representative of reality. And then beyond that, just this, if there were this like all-powerful AI that were controlling the narrative and selling us the story, and it was sort of this kind of they live a situation where like all our information comes to us through this one intelligence, that would be a problem. Although even that, I think we would find ways to see around it.
This is your Rex Nihilo optimism. It's like Rex is never going to be completely absorbed by anybody's story.
Right. Well, yeah. I mean, a lot of my characters are like that. Because there's always the doubter. I mean, I've always like since I was a little kid, I've always identified really strongly with the kid in The Emperor's New Clothes, because I just thought everybody around this kid is experiencing one reality, and he's experiencing something else. Or they're pretending to experience one reality. And I've always been like, it's always in the back of my mind, like, how do I know that I'm, that I'm not one of these people that is just pretending that it's just going along. So, and it's not, this isn't unique to me, but there are people like that out there, a lot of them who are always going to be poking, holes and questioning things. And I think it's kind of, I think it's underestimating the human ability to find. I mean, we go crazy. We were just talking about before we went live about the satanic panic in the 80s and people going nuts about thinking that Dungeons and Dragons was satanic. And we had people come to our school showing us how to find the devil in ice cubes. Do you know about this? Like in like liquor ads in magazines, they would have ice cubes.
Yeah,
and, they did the same thing with Disney too later.
Right. Yeah. Sometimes there's something to it, but if you were a 14-year-old kid, as I was at the time, and like I would not have been even looking at liquor ads if they hadn't have said, "Hey, check out." Go look at this magazine and check out all these liquor ads and see if you can find the devil in them. Like, that's not a constructive thing to tell a 14-year-old kid. I have no idea where I was going with this anymore. But
you're very optimistic. This is you give us crazy. A lot of hope in all of this.
Yeah, what you're saying is you're a natural skeptic.
Yes, but people, I mean, they're absolutely, and we were just talking about too, with everything, the insanity of the last several years, 10, 15 years or so, and just like Biden or his staff or whoever, or a intern or somebody waking up this morning deciding we need a new amendment to the Constitution. Like that's something that you could just do.
Oh, no, we already had an amendment to the Constitution. Everybody missed it.
And it's like, oh, by the way, this is the law now. Like, what are you talking about? And so it's like people go insane, and like whole societies go insane in a lot of different ways. But the truth has a way of coming out eventually. The gods of the copybook headings reassert themselves. Things. The Tower of Babel comes crashing down, whatever it's made of. I'm mixing a lot of different literary metaphors here to impress you.
Oh, yeah.
No, I'm impressed.
But everything, it's going to fall apart eventually, and then people are going to go, "Oh, wait a minute, that was not real." And some of them will actually seek the truth, and the truth always comes out in the end. And yeah, I'm kind of a hopeful cynic, I guess. Like I have sort of this kind of twisted sense of humor in a lot of ways, and very kind of cynical about things. But in the end, yeah, I can't help but be optimistic, because I think that I wouldn't be doing this if I didn't think there was a point to it. If I didn't think that I wouldn't be writing stories if I didn't think that it was part of something bigger, something important, that I was telling a sort of truth, so.
Yeah, but it sounds to me like you actually believe in the truth, which I'm greatly heartened by.
Yeah, yes, that's exactly what I'm saying. There is a truth out there.
Truth,
like
not
I'm not. Yes.
Yeah, and the thing is,
it's not
philosophically or
it's
metaphysically, there has to be, like you said, intelligence is divine, and that's lovely, and that truth is is actually real. It is reality.
Yeah, and it is real. And philosophically, once you start to try to pin these things down, like what is truth exactly, and how does language correlate with reality and all this kind of stuff. You can get into these kind of quagmires, and then it starts to look like there isn't any truth. But I think that's an error, and I think denying that there's a truth is an error, and asserting that exactly what the truth is probably also generally an error. But there is a truth out there, and we can, we can reach in that direction, I guess, or be pulled in that direction. Allow ourselves to be pulled in that direction. How's that?
Like beauty, right?
Yeah, same thing.
People will be attracted to it. Yeah.
Yes, yeah, and again, with beauty, it's like, what is it? Is it symmetry? Is it colorful? Is it because it's colorful? Is it because it's whatever? But you can't. It's hard to pin down. But that doesn't mean there isn't such a thing as beauty. Beauty is a real thing. Beauty is real. Truth is real. Meaning and purpose. These are all real, very real things. And I don't think that anybody who denies. There are people who want to deny these things, but I don't think anybody really believes it. I think that everybody believes in all these things to some degree.
Mm-hmm.
But they're also, we're also, as the sort of continuing thread, we're really good at putting ourselves in nonsensical stories. You set up BasedCon specifically because people were frustrated with the kinds of stories that were being foisted on the reading population, thinking they wanted particular kinds of distortions of reality, but
that's why I want to start. That's why I wanted to start writing, is because I wanted to write things that I actually wanted to read. It's the same type of thing.
The problem with the kind of literary scene, the sci-fi scene, and science fiction conventions, is that there are all these sort of artificial barriers that they put into place, which is kind of funny because it's historically, religious people. It's always supposedly the religious people, the Christians, who want to have blinders on, and this is the way people depict Christians as, no, you can't have any sex, you can't have any profanity, you can't have this, you can't have that, and putting all these artificial boundaries in art. And what you find in reality, at least for the last, couple of decades, probably more, is that all these artificial boundaries, these rules where your cast has to be exactly this much, even if it's set in a Middle Earth, which is inspired by medieval Europe, you have to make them 13% black, and whatever, it's 8% Asian and all this stuff, and it's ridiculous when they have all these rules and quotas and things you can't do and things that you have to do in every story, and it ends up being very, very constraining, and it's a way of kind of substituting this sort of rigid hierarchy, this rigid structure for the truth. And I wanted to write stories, and I wanted to create an environment for people who wanted to write stories that don't have these kind of limits. That isn't to say we don't have limits. There are things that are helpful to write about and helpful to put in your stories and to leave out. What's his name? The Game of Thrones guy. I can't even think of his name now.
J.R.R. Martin.
Yeah.
Martin, yeah. He, talking about how like Tolkien never says like where hobbits come from, like never talks about like hobbit sex, and it's like that's because we all know where they come from.
Right.
we know where babies come from. We don't need to see it.
He has nothing but
like,
genealogies in the appendices. We know where they come from. Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
It's stupid. These criticisms, and it's like it's true. He didn't put sex in there because it would not have helped the story. And you can say, I've got a mosquito buzzing around me that's I want to kill, but so people give Christians a hard time for it's like, well, you don't want to have sex in your stories, you want to have profanity in your stories. It's like, no, it's that the sex in this story and the sex in most stories does not help the story. There isn't any point to it other than just
it never advances the plot.
It never. I mean, there's almost never, very few exceptions where it's like, I've not written a single sex scene just because.
Oh, now your sales just plummeted. No.
I know. They don't. I could have. Yeah. No, I'm not even going to go there. No.
Okay. No. Well,
it's just. I don't think it helps.
See, Milo's
the story
haunting us in this conversation. I do agree with you, and I'm wondering if what we've not achieved at BasedCon. We keep trying to have different discussions around this because the people will come to BasedCon and say we want good stories, and the sort of criterion for good stories are usually left undefined. So but everybody feels like they know what it is when they see it. So what is a good story? And I think there must be some kind of, okay, for when we're writing our poem, I came across the Save the Cat screenplay thing, which is apparently like standard and cliched and stuff, but it really helped. That there's structures and twists, and I mean, I think I said that in my introduction, right? Plot twists. You're really good at plot twists. That there is some kind of satisfaction in storytelling that people are wanting to articulate why it is good, which is more than just, I mean, I identify with the character, the psychological thing, which
it's not just
I can go on about
that
for a minute, or the sex scenes, which means it's basically just porn, right? So you're,
right.
The feeling of I want to find myself in the story. I either I'm alone as a woman in this, or I read a few romance novels, and okay, fine. Sometimes they're okay, but most of the time it's not what I want to be reading. I despise more than I can possibly express the first person narrator female character, except for Shopaholic, who I think most women claim they want to be reading, and I just don't get it, right? It's like, I don't want to be reading me in the story. I don't know what's that. So what is, if that's a bad one, which it feels to me like a lot of the sci-fi fantasy that we don't like is doing, what is a good story?
Boy, that's another question, kind of like the beauty and truth question. Like I think trying to pin it down is really difficult, and part of the reason is that there are so many different kinds of stories, and every story, I guess I think of the sort of arc of creation and redemption, and the whole story of the universe is a story. It's a narrative, and we as human beings with souls, spiritual beings, we that story resonates with us. And every good story is at least a sliver of that. Like, I'm kind of struggling.
I absolutely agree with you. There's one story and we're in it.
But there's one story, right? And there's one story, and every good story is kind of like I don't know if it's like a diamond, and where it's like one facet of it or one sliver of a facet of it. And so it's a lot of times there's just enough. I mean, even in like short stories, you know, even if it doesn't have any spiritual, religious themes or anything in it, sometimes even just a joke or just like a Shaggy Dog story or whatever, it's sometimes if it's just funny, it's just it's clever. You know, there are even cleverness, irony, puns, all of these things I think are a way of bending reality back on itself and saying, you know, the human being is looking at things and going, answering a question that the mind is posing and saying, well, you know, here's one possible answer, but here's another one that you didn't think of. That's what a pun is, right? Or you know, irony, and any kind of story that feels satisfying to us is a way of it's your brain is asking a question, you know, what's going to happen, and then the story is coming back with an answer, and it's satisfying for a reason, and there's a lot of different reasons, but they're all related to the fact that story is part of this whole, this grand narrative. And it may be something like The Lord of the Rings, which is very much, I mean, you can definitely see, you know, a very kind of biblical influence on it. And it feels very much like I don't think he would, you know, Tolkien would say it's an allegory, but there are elements that correspond to elements in our real world, and it's a very rich, full story that shows a lot of that overall story. But then there are other stories, you know, like my Rex Nilo stories. They're not Tolkien by any stretch of the imagination, and they don't have generally any kind of like deep point they're making, but there are things in them that are, you know, good triumphs over evil, more or less, in some way, or maybe not in the way you were expecting, but things come out okay. People get what they deserve. Even Rex basically gets what he deserves, which is generally nothing. A lot of trouble for nothing, which is great about, you know. So it's still, even in these, just a story that's written purely to be entertaining is satisfying for a reason, and because you know, we have these questions about what reality is and how things are, and then sometimes the answers that come back are amusing to us, and they feel right, but in an unexpected way, which is what humor is. And even so there's and there's action stories, and there's romances, and they're all a part of this story. And I think that they're all valid stories, and the only bad story is the ones that try to twist things to make them the way they are not. And you know, try to,
so they're revelatory, the good ones. They reveal something of truth.
Yes, right. The good stories all reveal something to us about ourselves, or about the world, or about God, about truth, and then there are stories that try to twist things or put barriers in place. Like I was talking about Game of Thrones, how he couldn't finish it because he's basically trying to write a secular version of the Lord of the Rings, and he has said that, I think. But yeah, try to tear down all the stuff that made the Lord of the Rings great. But guess what? You can't do it. It doesn't work because the story doesn't have any meaning. Right. And so you screwed yourself by setting yourself up that way. And so then he can't admit that there's no satisfactory ending to this thing, and there's never going to be. And so the whole thing is whole thing is a lie. And it may be entertaining for a while. You know, it may not be even a bad story for most of it, but in the end, he's trying to tell a lie, and he knows it on some level, and he's going to fail. Either whether he finishes it or not, it's not going to work.
Which is why he's not finishing it. Maybe he knows it, right?
I think he knows it.
I felt very dissatisfied reading this one book, Windswept House, Malachi Martin, years ago. I think when it was first published, or maybe it was the second publishing. Anyway, I didn't like the way it ended. It proposed a question and then refused to answer it. I'm like, is this a cliffhanger? Or is there a part two? And there wasn't. There wasn't one.
Malachi Martin is the priest who did all the exorcisms and stuff, right?
I think he was an exorcist, yeah. But yeah, he got. Go ahead.
I read a book by him, which was for a while I was reading a lot of stuff about exorcisms and demons and stuff for it. And that was one of the books I read. And he's very much, I think he embellished. There are a lot more stories about like true stories about exorcism, and demon possession. That is some terrifying stuff, and it doesn't need to be embellished. And his story, he has a book that is a series of stories, and they're very much.
Oh, he wrote about exorcisms? He wrote fictional stories about them, or true stories?
No, supposedly true stories. If it's the same guy, Father Malachi Martin,
well,
I think.
Malachi Martin was a Jesuit who got released from his vows, and he became a writer, and he wrote fiction, as far as I know. Now, I did read Gabriel Amorth's books. He was an exorcist of Rome. Was it that one? Maybe there was a lot of interviews with him. So I read like 3 of his books.
I'm gonna look this up.
Yeah.
Right. I'm pretty sure it's the same guy, because he wrote a bunch of it was supposed to be true stories that he had researched and found these people who were.
Oh, okay. Gabriel Amorth was the exorcist. He didn't do the research. So yeah, it must have been Martin, but So he has a reputation of I think E. Michael Jones thinks he was with the CIA or something like that.
Yeah, here it is.
Inventing demon stories.
Hostage to the Devil: The Possession and Exorcism of 5 Contemporary Americans.
Okay,
so
I do remember that.
Stories title. That of exorcisms that he researched and interviewed people and stuff. But the stories are very much like, if you read a bunch of these stories and then you read that book, it's like these are a little too clean and a little too just a little too. They're overly dramatic. They're kind of like when you see a movie and it says based on true events or whatever. That was that kind of feeling where it was like there's probably some truth there, but it did. I got the feeling that he did some embellishment there. So
he was a very good writer of intrigue. If Windswept House is any.
Well, it was a really well written book, and it would have been really compelling had I not read a bunch of other books that were of similar accounts.
Actual stories,
that weren't quite as dramatic, but they were more convincing. So anyway,
now I want to know about what. Okay, so it sounds to me like we will be saved from the AI fantasy spinning that people are projecting could take over us, because the stories the pieces won't fit together properly.
I think that's
it's like the AI images that have too many fingers and such that will reality. No, it's like reality has there's a
It is interesting that the AI cannot ever get the hands right.
It's starting to get better, but
they're getting better. Yeah.
I mean, God's creation has perfect structure, and we will notice this. We will notice aberrations from it. It's bad art. Art will reveal itself.
Yeah, think about the hand, though. I mean, and there's no two fingerprints alike, and AI can't get the hands right. That's very poignant to me.
Okay, so now, Rob, I'm curious. Footnote on the demons, like what in the demon stories was real, and what, because I'm also imagining it's like we're in this moment where we want better stories, we want delightful stories, but in fact, true stories are often very simple in their sort of resolution because the reality is shown again and you're satisfied with that. And that people writing stories that end up as fake often get too elaborate. It sounded like you were saying that Martin was creating
it's been a few
overly
years since
overdone. It's like the extra bits on the frills and such.
And the thing was that it wasn't even, I mean, there are pretty well documented accounts of demon possession and exorcisms that are I mean, clearly supernatural elements. There are things that, a 100-pound, 90-pound woman throws a 200-pound man across the room kind of thing, where like there were, several witnesses to this. And there's stuff that happens that a lot of these stories, what you read about, and it's not all that dramatic, but there are definitely things, people speaking languages that they don't speak, and perfect, ancient Greek or whatever, and Latin and stuff. Just really, really strange stuff. And the funny thing, well, not funny, the odd thing about these stories that struck me as odd about the Malachi Martin stories wasn't that they were less realistic or more outlandish. It was that they were more, it was almost kind of overwrought, where he maybe romanticized a little bit, and so to make it more of like a kind of a dramatic struggle between good and evil, where it's really just kind of, I mean, demons are twisted, blunted, entities. They're not generally speaking, like masterminds and urbane demons, or devils like Mephistopheles or something. They're kind of evil, horrible little brutes that see an opening and take it. And that's the way they come across in a lot of these other accounts, where there are different types of them, in different strengths. And a lot of times, like the exorcism itself is not, I mean, it's a lot of prayer and a lot of like reading of prayers and scripture, and it's a long process, and it's not dramatic at all. It's just kind of like, eventually this demon's going to get sick of this and can't take it anymore. And so it's not even the stories were too outlandish. It was just that they were overly kind of romanticized and dramatized, and
like he was hoping for a script.
Yeah, and it's well-written book. I mean, if it was a fictional story, if it had been a novel, it would have been riveting. But I found it a little distasteful because I felt like he was, not really being fully truthful. So I don't know, and that's a whole other question. Like, how much of that is justified? If you're trying to make a point. I mean, I'm sure he thought he was trying to, write a compelling story to warning people about the dangers of demons, and maybe he probably had the best of intentions, but maybe making it too slick, making it too romantic, too compelling emotionally, making it too manipulating too much is kind of a sort of dishonesty.
Yeah, I get what you're saying. Yeah.
So,
like you say, if it were fiction, it'd be like, oh, that's a good fictional book. But the fact that he was trying to pass it off as more scholarly or analytical, but use the same dramatic devices is distasteful. I could see that. Yeah.
So I don't know. I don't know. There's no real clear line. It's a tough thing because there's no clear line really between, like what is literature and what is, telling a truthful account of something, and what is, embellishment, and what is, rhetoric as opposed to, just bare facts. And so
and see, this is where you get with the Cross-Time Crusade stories into my problem, into my world. So Rob, he and I had a few fairly long conversations about Templars, and I gave him some reading and bibliography on history in 12th century, and that you taught me about the Siege of Lisbon, things I never knew.
I didn't know them either before I read the
I know,
book.
it was great. But what I liked in the Crosstime Crusade problem you set up with is a little bit of spoiler alert, that there's a manuscript floating around that the characters are trying to find, but it turns out it comes from now, and they take it back in time. So the Crosstime Crusade is that. And I realized it's sort of philosophically or maybe just mainly philosophically, this is a problem that we create for ourselves in studying history in the first place. And I like this problem of, if you send the characters back in time and they're trying to blend themselves into the time, looking for the thing that they think is back there in time, but it's actually something that's been created in the present and sent back. Literally, that's my job, right? That you're always trying to figure out, am I telling the story in a way that was actually the way it was experienced, but I'm bringing to it my perspective from now. And so my perspective from now is going to change the way I think the characters lived or understood. I think there was one thing in the draft that you sent me once, and I said, well, that's the wrong armor, or, someone wouldn't say that. And this sort of feel that we can have of, we could travel in time imaginatively to tell the past as it really was, but we can't. We're always fixing it. I'm not sure when I'm telling history and when I'm imagining myself into a story that I've created myself. And historians worry about this constantly, because we never know the degree to which we've created the reality that we're then trying to pretend we've found.
Right.
You're afraid you're projecting yourself onto it, in your own experiences.
Yes.
And understandings.
Right. And
okay.
in Rob's story, he has them like actually transporting a manuscript back and forth in time. But the problem is we kind of do that imaginatively every time we're trying to tell the story accurately.
Mm.
Yeah, and in this, this is another theme that kind of comes up in my books, or something similar to this, where you get so wound up kind of trying to unravel the mystery, and then you end up sort of chasing your own tail.
Right.
And I think maybe it and in the end, again, I'm not going to spoil the ending, because I think that the ending, I like the ending, the way the Crosstime Crusade ends, because what finally solves the problem, resolves the conflict, is not all the running around and trying to fix things. There's something else going on that is hinted at that is the real thing. And it's the real thing. And so I think that comes back to maybe what you're saying about history and whether you're imposing your view on it or not. And I think if you're kind of chasing your tail that way, if you don't have any concept that there is an actual truth out there that you need to be going toward and
right.
and focusing on, then you're gonna be lost. So there has to be another element. There has to be more than the running around, than looking at things and looking at things again, and then going back and because you're chasing your own tail. You're creating an infinite loop, and literally in the case of the Crosstime Crusade, there's an infinite loop of causality, and it's like how do you break out of that loop? And there is an answer to that. That I give to that. So
well, the breaking out of the loop again, is what people are afraid of right now, whether we're going to be able to. And the sort of we're having this on the Friday,
the negative feedback.
Yes, well, the Friday before the inauguration, that's going to be indoors because it's going to be too cold on Monday, and that this, I mean, it's interesting your timeline of starting to write the Mercury stories in 2000. You were publishing the 2011, 2012.
13.
Yeah, I originally self-published it in 2009 or 10,
okay.
I think.
So, I mean, I feel like we've been caught in this Obama loop since 2008 or so, right? And it's like the things we were allowed to say, the things we weren't allowed to say, the degree to which the culture is trying to redefine itself around certain kinds of premises that now suddenly are all cracking apart, breaking down. And I mean, we've been worried about being able to break out of this loop for a while. I mean, I ended up in BasedCon because of something I said about, men, right, in 2015. 10 years ago now, and finally, right, it's going to come back around to say I wasn't actually being a hateful person. I was just celebrating, the culture, kind of the truth, the strength, the courage, the decency of people. So it's not a small problem to think, how do we break out of a either a mass formation delusion or a feedback loop that we've been caught in culturally for a certain amount of time, and then when it's gone, poof, nobody believed it ever, right? It's like for me, this is always a problem of a historian, right? And this is where you in the Cross-Time Crusade, you were playing with like what's motivating them for the crusade, which matters. But if I'm trying to teach a class about like why people fought the 30 Years' War, it can be kind of tricky because you have to think yourself into the feedback loop they were caught in about Protestants and Catholics.
Oh, that's an excellent point. Yeah, you have to get into somebody else's feedback loop. Right. That's the perfect way to put it.
Yeah, and the Crusades were a much longer time frame, and there was a definite you could definitely see like, okay, well, the Muslims moved in, and that in this year, and there was this response to it, and you could very much see the conflict relating to actual events in the real world. But with a lot of history in a more compressed time frame, a lot of times you're just reacting to what you think the other people are thinking about what you're doing, and so who knows what you're actually fighting about a lot of times. Like I've said before, if we ever have a civil war in this country, we're not even going to be able to agree what we're fighting about. And we still can't agree what the last one was about. So
yes, that's completely true. We don't. We'll end up in the feedback loop and be fighting, and we won't know why.
We won't know why we're fighting, and then it'll end, and people won't know what it was about. Everybody will have their own story of what it was about, and in the end, none of the stories are really 100% true, because of course, every war is, 1 million people or whatever or more, that are involved, and they all have their own understanding of things. And people, although they act like sheep, sometimes they're not sheep. They think differently. They model each other's minds, which results in this feedback loop of trying to anticipate what they're anticipating, what I'm anticipating. And
well, this is what I wanted to get to, because we put this on the poster, right? The Grift Too Far.
Okay.
And then I thought this was that. Well, it's all grift, right? But what I wrote to Rob when I had read this, I was like, brilliant, right? It's like it is, but I mean, philosophically, the Rex Nihilo ones are amazing, and not just for what he's playing with in terms of Sasha and Rex's relationship and whether or not it's abusive, right? But in this one in particular, I said, brilliant, a mass delusion caused by believing the movies about World War II and concentration camps that are about making up backstories. And I'm like, okay, that
because the people who aren't taking the war seriously enough get sent to concentration camps to concentrate. So that they can come up with. Because they're not taking it seriously enough, so they have to come. And coming up with, everybody's got to come up with their backstory of like who they are in the war. And if you don't, and then the whole thing is Rex and Sasha, who are the main characters, get stuck on this planet where there's been a misunderstanding that results in this whole society devoting itself to basically reenacting World War II movies. So they have to be fully committed to this fiction. And if you're not acting all the time as if you're in the war, then you get sent to concentration camp to concentrate, and then you have to come up with a backstory for yourself for who you are, and then eventually, if you come up with a good enough story and you're convincing enough, about who you are, they will let you back into the war.
So if you lie well enough, then you can get out of concentration.
Right. If you lie, well, yes.
But I think that it's it's a pun. The concentration camp, obviously, when Rex is forced to like sit with his own thoughts, it's horrible. It's
the worst kind of torment you can imagine, being alone with his own thoughts. Yes.
So you're actually concentrating, but also that they're doing nobody dies for real, but the people die and they can't be revived again. They're physically still alive, but they need a new backstory so that they can then be reinserted back into.
They can't be they can't be the same person again, and so then it becomes sort of an arms race of who can come up with the better backstories faster.
And it take a whole month to come up with a good one. And I'm like, again, this is like my job, right? Of you're figuring out are they actually which story is it? I mean, this.
Right. There's multiple layers, because then at one point in the movie or in the story, while they're reenacting this movie, they decide they're going to make a movie as part of the war effort. They're going to make a propaganda effort to demonstrate that what they're trying to do is possible, so that they can do what they need to do. And then there's multiple layers of people pretending to be in this war, the movie that's within the war effort that's also a pretend war. And
I spent today, or maybe some of yesterday, reading. Substack is a bit of a feedback loop now itself, right? And you're reading about how, who was it writing? Anyway, the Gulf War never actually happened. It was actually just the United States setting up a massacre, because apparently Saddam Hussein was enticed to invade Kuwait, and then we set up, and so like an invented war. And apparently Ukraine isn't real either. And you're like, oh my gosh, I never mind whether World War II is real or not, or all filmed.
Well, real,
it's real.
Dying,
well,
right? I mean, the article made that point. They said, no, people are dying, but
you read it too, right? I sent
Yeah, I did. Yeah.
I'm saying exactly what level of carnival reality are we in by this point, where we can't tell? I mean, this is I've spent my husband
a manufactured war.
No, my husband started a rewatch all of MASH, which is talk about like finding yourself in your childhood newsreels. But MASH is about the Korean War, but it's actually about the Vietnam War. It lasts for 11 years, which is longer than the Korean War itself. Actually,
three times longer.
8 years, like 8 years longer than the war.
Unless you take each episode to be about 4 days, and then it's actually the whole war. That the degree to which we know about either Korea or Vietnam is because it was shown on television, which is then. Our problem now, it's like with the TikTok ban that may or may not happen on Sunday, and the degree to which that has influenced the peace that is hopefully being created between Israel and Gaza right now. Like, all of this depends on what we see on the screens, how people respond to the reality of the engagements. Rex Nihilo is parody of something incredibly serious, which is the degree to which we do believe these stories.
It's one of my favorite of the Rex books, because I love how that all turned out. And one of my favorite parts, and speaking of tricking people into feeling, having feelings for something that isn't real, there's one part where a character who is in the war, it's this grizzled Scottish veteran, but it's in actuality like a 12-year-old girl who is playing part of this grizzled Scottish veteran,
because she's been given that backstory. Yeah,
it's like gaming.
And she, this is kind of a minor spoiler, but so she dies in the movie that's going on in the war, and he has this dramatic death scene, that's very poignant, and like it's hard to read it. Like even me as an author reading it, it's like, oh, that's kind of touching, but it's all completely just nonsense, because she's not even a real person. she's pretending to be someone she's not, and she's not even actually dying. In the book, she's not even dying.
Nobody dies.
Like it's nobody dies. And the whole thing is just, it's completely fake. And it's like, even like, of course, the book itself is fictional. So it's like, it's fake in the first place, but it's like,
Right.
there's like 3 levels of
Fake
fakery.
within a fake within a fake. Yeah.
But it still, you still read it and it's like, oh, that's so sad. Because your mind is just wired to work that way. And it's such a crazy, fascinating thing to me that you can do that to somebody. You know, it's like, if you ever read the book, Fidel Escher Bach, where he talks about all this stuff and these kind of these sort of strange loops and feedback mechanisms and stuff where you have the system referring to itself, and you're so wired to want a resolution that you won't even realize that, like, you're several layers deep in this this narrative, this multi-layered narrative, but it feels like it feels meaningful, even though it's like levels and levels of nonsense.
Yeah, and if I remember that particular dialogue, it doesn't pop back out, right? It's
right.
It's indenting, and then it starts popping back out, but it doesn't actually go it doesn't resolve back out in reality.
It feels like it, right. And he analogizes it to, I think it's a Bach piece where it does the same thing, where it doesn't actually resolve. He resolves because it and I don't know the music terminology, but it does the same thing where it's like it's a
canon. It's a canon going back and forth.
Yeah. Right. And so then it's resolved on one level, but not on the final one. But so it feels like it's resolved, but then later on you're like, wait a minute. So it's really interesting stuff that you can kind of play with people's brains like that, because no matter how we get there, we find ourselves identifying with characters, with people who are like us, and we see ourselves in them, and we feel it makes us feel things, which is just a fascinating thing.
Are we going to be able to pop this back out to the point where where did we start tonight?
I don't know.
I think you started on AI, didn't you?
I'm hoping that we're as a society, we're starting to pop back out into reality, because I think I was talking a little bit before we came online about how, and you mentioned it a little bit too earlier, where it's like the last 10, 15 years have felt very unreal in a lot of ways, and it would be nice to have things to at least have a reality that we can refer to, that seems, like that we can more or less share is like and agree that
what okay like, so this is like
what a man is, what a woman is.
What story do you think we're in then? You said it's creation, which we agree on, but do you have I'm finding it's a very strange moment to be in, because we've been fighting this one nonsense story pretty thoroughly for 15, 20 years. It's a long time.
Yeah.
They're grown-up people around who've never known a different one. And I think with the World War II story, I mean, you skirted pretty close to some fairly dangerous claims there. The degree to which we are able to look back on the previous narratives that we've been telling and say, maybe in fact our historical version of them themselves was part of these projections. I mean, historians rewrite stuff all the time, and so this should be normal practice, but there's certain particular stories that people get very fraught over having rewritten.
For sure. Yeah. And I'll just say that I'm aware of what I was flirting with in the book, and I went as far as I wanted to go, and this is as far as I was going to go, because to me that the story is the story, and it's like people can take out of it what they want. It's not my job to tell them what to think about anything in particular, but what story are we now in? Are we just in this story? We're in this fog story. We're in a hope story. I mean, it's a curious moment. What I'm hoping, what I'm kind of hoping is that in 20 years or so, we'll look back and there'll be this kind of parenthetical bit of history where we were like, what was that all about? Kind of like the way we look at the 70s now, where it's like people were wearing the craziest stuff, and it was like, and just like all the design of everything, carpet, the plush carpet, the shag carpet, and wallpaper, and just all the crazy styles and everything in the 70s. It's like the 70s, but applied to like epistemology.
Yes. Well, I think metaphysics needs to make a comeback for sure. I'm even
like
feeling sympathy for the scholastics.
Our understanding of reality for the past 15 years has been, bell bottoms and sideburns and shag carpets. And I'm hoping that we're like coming out of that. And now we're okay, that was a little weird, and we can agree it was a little weird, and let's move on, to something else, because it's just, yeah, like you said, there are people alive today who don't know any different.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, it feels very much like the world became like a Philip Dick novel sometime around 2012, and we're still kind of in it. And maybe Trump is a continuation of that or a rebuttal of that or something. I don't know. But just because of the kind of the showman aspect of it, like maybe we're still not quite into reality yet, and we have to finish this cycle.
We could be in a show of The
I feel
Apprentice. Yeah, it's like we're still in reality TV right now.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
It's still not completely real, and maybe it's. Speaking of Philip Dick, I don't know if you ever read "Two Androids Dream of Electric Sheep," the book that Blade Runner was based on. But there's just as a point of reference for all this stuff. There's a show that everybody in that book is watching.
Mm-hmm.
They all get together and watch the show. It's Buster Friendly and his friendly friends or something. I listened to it in the Spanish audiobook, so it gets a little lost in translation. But it's this horrible TV show where they're just like, they're making fun of like the whole idea of like empathy and stuff. But as I was listening to this book, I kept thinking to myself, oh, it's so nice that the whole society comes together and listens to this one show. Like that's such a quaint notion. Like,
yeah, like that
to
used
have
to be a thing.
Like that used to be a thing. Like we don't do that anymore.
Yeah.
It's like we don't all talk about like who shot JR or whatever anymore. It's like there isn't anything. We don't all watch Johnny Carson together anymore. It's like, and it's very much kind of a nostalgia, even though it's supposed to be this horrible, creepy thing, that everybody's watching this show. To me, it was like a nostalgic thing, and so it's like we've actually gotten to the point where our society is like more creepy than a Philip Dick novel. So hopefully that we're heading in a more sane direction now. I'm seeing some signs of that. I'm hoping it's the case. Anyway, I won't be a lot around that.
Yeah, those books were written in the 60s. This kind of mass delusion that's been driven by propaganda, TikTok to television to newsreels during the Second World War and maybe just after the First. I think we've been living this kind of a illusion-fueled life for 100 years. So are we going to come out of this?
So maybe so you're thinking it goes back. We've been living in this illusory world for much longer.
Yes.
Like ever since the newsreels started and
ever since the newsreels started. And I mean the American Civil War was the first one that was photographed. So maybe it even goes back.
Maybe it goes back even farther than that, and it's just we've always lived in a sort of a artificial reality, because it was always just the village storyteller or the shaman or whoever that was always we're always interpreting our reality based on what we know about the people on the other side of the mountain or whatever. And so
enhanced reality. And I think Rachel's made a point before about, this kind of thing started happening with the printing press too. So,
well, it started with language. What just
itself.
The thing about
with consciousness, which may or may not be the same thing.
The thing about language is I was sitting with my brother once, and we need to have my brother on. And Rob, you need to meet my brother, Rob. Seriously, and I think he's exactly your age. When were you born?
Bring him to BasedCon. I was born in 1970.
Oh, he's a year older than you are. So my brother is your age. He's very philosophical, reads a lot of James Joyce. And one time we were sitting on a porch in the mountains and just looking out, and I realized anything I wanted to say was about something that wasn't there, right? There was no point in talking about the trees or the sun or what we were looking at. And if I wanted to talk about something, it would be about the people that weren't there, or something that happened that wasn't happening now, or this or that. And he does a lot of yoga too. So he's just sitting there, and I'm like, there's literally nothing I can say, because anything I would say would be not now.
Mm-hmm.
The language, just being able to talk about anything else, language is constantly pointing at things that aren't here and now.
Or even just to be able to think about things that are not there.
Right.
I mean, that's my problem. I'm never in the moment, because I'm always thinking about all this crazy stuff that ends up in my books, because.
So it's like the thing is, I think you've given me a lot of hope tonight. I'm very, very grateful to you for that. That we do it. I mean, this is what Tolkien would say about subcreation. We do it as, in the image and likeness in which we were made. So God is clearly dreaming all of this for us, right? I think David Lynch said something about being in the dream, and I tweeted back at, saying, God's dreaming, right? We're not dreaming. We're not just dreaming. God is dreaming, and we're in his dream. And that insofar as we are, I think the strong metaphor for us with Draco Alchemicus and what you were saying with Gödel Escher Bach, it's music, right? If we're in harmony with God, then things all are happy and beautiful and true. And that therefore we do not need to be worried about either the demons or the AI. I'm still worried. But
really, we should never be worried about anything, but I do feel more hopeful. I'm not a huge Trump fan, but I at this point, I didn't vote for him last time, but this time I absolutely did, because I
don't want to be caught in that other dream.
So, I am so done with the just the sort of artificial reality that's been foisted on us in so many ways. And if I have to elect a reality TV star to do that, then that's what needs to be done.
That makes sense. We want reality TV. We want reality back. We'll go for reality TV.
Right. I mean, the thing is, somebody was referring to saying that Donald Trump is basically like Groucho Marx, and I can't remember the exact analogy, but it was pretty clever about how he's sort of kind of this boorish character who just kind of makes a joke of the elites by kind of being one of them. Like, he shows up and it's like,
right.
well, I'm richer than you, and I have gold-plated, whatever, and like the toupee or comb over and everything. Boorish, yeah. And it's just like, just his existence there is completely deflates the whole idea of the elite. And I love that, because that's Groucho Marx is one of the biggest inspirations for the Rex Nihilo character. Because when I was a kid, my dad he taught film among other things, and he used to show us the Marx Brothers movies, and I loved those, and I thought that Groucho Marx is such a great character, or his characters in the movies, for that reason, because Rex is always kind of he's ridiculous, but he's also kind of puncturing the illusions of everyone around him. So hopefully that's the role that Trump is going to continue to play. Reveal reality to us by being a clown, basically, whether he's aware of it or not.
I think he's aware of it.
We shall see. So
at some point, I don't know. I mean, he's so devoted to the role at this point that I don't know if he knows anymore. But I don't really care. I think it's just it's extremely entertaining, if nothing else. It's just.
Well, We'll find out, right? Okay, so this is
Because we have the worst elites in the world, and so just to have somebody
Oh
on that
yeah.
stage who just completely deflates them is wonderful, no
Well,
matter
yeah, yeah. He just bowls through a room, and people say, "Well,
Yeah.
who let him in?" He said, "I did. I just bought the place."
who. Right.
Like that.
yes, I can see the
Yep.
Groucho Marx
He is
element.
Groucho. That's a really
He's
good
Groucho.
analogy.
Yeah. Sorry, I think we were kind of stepping on you there, Rachel.
Well, I'm saying we've
Sorry.
taken up as much time as we said we would take.
Yes.
And so we should just stop, right? Because this has been too much fun. Anything you want to tell the people about where to find you and what you would recommend they read, and
You can so I have 35 novels out, a bunch of different types of stuff. Starship Grifters, the first Rex Nilo book, is actually, I think, 99 cents right now on Amazon on Kindle, so you could pick that up and see if you like it. I also run BasedCon, which is a based science fiction and fantasy convention that Rachel and Kimberly was there last time too. BasedCon.com, and also I have a book club that we didn't get to, but that's fine. Basedbookclub.com, science fiction and fantasy book club. So you can check that out.
we can have you back on with Hans, and you guys can both talk about based
Yeah.
books.
That will be fun.
Okay.
That'll be fun.
Well, thank you so much for giving us hope.
I wasn't expecting to give you hope, but I'm glad I was able to do
But
it.
you did. You did. So that's
I'm glad that I did. It's always a pleasure to talk to you, and we love having you at BasedCon. It's you guys are a great addition to the group there.
Thank you for having
Thank you.
us, and we'll bring you back on the arc. So I need to read. Well, anyway, there's more to come. Thank you guys all so much for joining us, and we'll see you after the inauguration. Good night.
Yes. Good night.